Hi, everyone. You caught me. I went to close my door. Hey, how are you? I did my live this morning, so this is not my standard live broadcast for Kingdom Influencer Nugget. This is separate and apart. I just really felt compelled, I guess, to come on and just to celebrate and acknowledge that today at sundown is the beginning of Passover. And I know that everybody is, like in their Holy Week celebrations and stuff, and they're going to do Good Friday and Easter Sunday, and that's all good. Resurrection Sunday, and that's all good. But I think that it is vitally important that we know God's thing. Who is this? Oh shoot. I think it's very important. Sorry about that. That we understand from God's perspective when Jesus sacrificed himself, when Yeshua gave himself for us and for our sins, and that we don't get it twisted with man's tradition and lose the weight of it. Okay, that's what's really important, because if we just this is, and I go through this every year because it's really difficult, because some people take offense to knowing the truth, which is really crazy. They're so caught up in the traditions of man that knowing the truth offends, because it doesn't completely align with man's traditions. But I think this is important, and hopefully knowledge is power, and hopefully if you have the revelatory knowledge of the totality of what Christ did for us, then it will help you embrace it even the more. It will make it so much more valuable than what you already determined it to be. Okay, I feel like I'm rambling, but anyway, so Passover begins at sundown today. All right, it's the 15th Nisan, I believe is what it is. Now, I am not totally like a rabbi and really into all of the scholarship of the Hebrew calendar, but I do track and follow the feast days, especially the high holy feast days on the Jewish calendar, because these are the things that God told us to celebrate, not the traditions of man, but what God said. And so I wanted to just break this down a little bit for you. Oh, look at mine. My shirt is matching my lion. Look at that. My lioness. Anyway, bouncing ball. You get caught up with the bouncing ball. But anyway, so I understand how the tradition probably got started with Good Friday and Resurrection Sunday, because Christ died on the Sabbath. They needed to get him in that borrowed tomb before sundown, because it was the Sabbath, and no work was to be done after sundown. And for the Jewish culture, sundown starts the beginning of the day. So it's from sundown to sundown the next day that equates to the day. All right. So even if you go back and you read it and you read the accounts of it, you'll read that he was in the Garden of Gethsemane 2 days before the Sabbath. That's how it is before the Passover celebration. And if you remember the Last Supper, the disciples came to him and asked him where he wanted to celebrate. Okay. And for Passover and what have you. So it's like it's all tied in to this. Now, what was Passover? Passover was the feast that was established that commemorated the Israelites being freed from Egypt. It commemorated going from slavery to freedom. This is why this is so important, okay? So the night before Pharaoh released them, they were told to paint blood, take the blood of a lamb, unblemished lamb, put it on their door frame, because that would be the symbol or the sign to the, basically to the angel of death to pass by their house, all right, and not afflict their firstborn child. Okay, because the last thing, the last pestilence, the last you know what I'm trying to say, dang, the last edict that God gave me. You know what, y'all, I have brain fog sometimes, and the word will escape me, but it'll come back to me. But anyway, so there were all of these things that led up with the frogs and the blood in the Nile and all of that led up to the last one. And the last one was that the firstborn child would be killed. Basically, they would die. There was no physical stabbing. There was no gorging. They didn't have guns back then. There was none of that. They would just die. Because when I tell you God has the ability to just take the breath out of your body, please hear me. They would just die. And that was with livestock and human beings. Okay. And so if you put that blood over your doorpost, your child would be spared. It would not. That would not. I want to call it a curse, but it wasn't. I don't want to like to use curse with God at the same time, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so the death angel would pass by and your child would be spared. And so this is what the Israelites did. Remember, they were down in Goshen, and they had the ability to be separated from what was going on in Egypt at that moment. Christ chose Passover because the death angel passed over. Christ chose Passover to sacrifice himself for us, because basically we went from being slaves to free. The same way the children of Israel went from slavery in Egypt to being released to freedom, to on their way to the promised land, it pertained to the same thing. And this is why it's so important that this day, today, which marks Passover, that we celebrate what Christ did for us, that we celebrate it in the fact that we have gone from slaves to sin, slaves to the ways of the world, into the freedom of knowing who we are as children of the Most High, as being heirs and joint heirs with Christ. Don't lose what's happening today, what you have the ability to celebrate this day by getting caught up in Good Friday, okay? We don't know if it was Friday or not. I understand the connotation and the connection because it was Sabbath. But here's what you might not know is that the Feast of Passover was considered a high Sabbath. It wasn't a normal Sabbath. So it wasn't necessarily a Sabbath that happened on a Saturday. No matter what day of the week Passover came on, it was considered the Sabbath. So that's kind of how that connotation got a little twisted, that, okay, well, we know that the Sabbath starts at sundown on Saturday and goes to sundown on sundown on Friday goes to sundown on Saturday. So that's your Sabbath, which would say if it was on a Friday, it would have happened Friday at 3:00. He would have given up the ghost, had to be taken off the cross and put into a borrowed tomb. But it may not have been on a Friday, okay? So what you do is you follow the Hebraic calendar, and we know it was the 15th of Nisan, which falls on today, all right? So because we know that, I just don't want you not to acknowledge the totality of what God did for us over 2,000 years ago on this day, where we can celebrate Passover and know that we've come out of slavery into the freedom that God purchased for us with his life. That is so amazing. It is so powerful. So don't lose that. Don't lose that in Easter bunnies and Easter baskets and all of that. whatever you're going to do on Sunday, don't lose that. Know that on Passover, he gave up the ghost. He said he'd be in that borrowed tomb 3 days, and he rose with all power. With all power. So we don't want to lose what God has given us with tradition. We want to honor his feast. We want to honor his high holy days. All right. So that was it. That's it. And again, I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody. I just want you to understand the importance of what today is. So we're not so focused on Good Friday that we miss Passover when it is when he actually gave of himself for us. That's it. All right. All right. You guys be blessed. And Lord willing, I'll see you morning for my normal nugget. All right. All right. Bye-bye.